Goal.com. We're here. 5 players with the most to prove. CJ Sapong. This is in. I can't even remember who wrote the article for Goal.com, but you can go there. It's on their website. And the whole point was the 5 players who had the most to prove to Klinsmann during Camp Cupcake were CJ Sapong, Chris Wondolowski, Jeff Cameron, Michael Parkhurst, and Benny Feilhaber. And the point for CJ in this article was that he needed to show he was another option up front. That, he was going to be, I think they called him, not Altidore light, they called him something else light. But obviously we need some help up front. So, it is a big chance for CJ.
This comment was mainly to say that he's another option compared to Agudelo and Bunbury.
Bunbury, that's it.
In all honesty, there's no wrong answer here. Everybody has something to prove. I mean, there are some people who have less to prove. Like I mentioned beforehand with when we talked about the squad that's been mentioned, Laurentowicz and Raimondo are getting up there in age. They're at that point. It's just like you're not going to bypass the current crop. You're not even Laurentowicz isn't even going to bypass Beckerman, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Again, nothing against Laurentowicz. I just think that's how it is. Well, like I said, there's not really a wrong answer. Mm-hmm. I have a different 5, although not completely different. Now, I don't know if you went that route too. I don't know if you got a separate 5 as well.
I don't actually, but go for it.
I ended up labeling Feilhaber and Clark, mm-hmm. Bunbury, Agudelo, and Cameron. I was going to ask you specifically about Clark. Why Clark? Because I think
Klinsmann already knows Clark.
Well, I'm not saying that he doesn't know Clark. I'm just saying this is his opportunity to make a statement mm-hmm. to get himself in the upcoming friendlies. Him and Feilhaber are both seasoned vets. They've played with the national team many times. We've all seen it. Mm-hmm. However, Clark is on a bit of a downward spiral. Not really a downward spiral. He has had some injury issues, but even then, he hasn't had that much playing time this season.
Right.
I think this is his opportunity to make his stamp on the team. If he mm-hmm. can go up there and say, hey, I can play the exact same position that, Beckerman can play, I should get a call up for another game. Mm-hmm. Feilhaber, again, is a seasoned vet. He's not getting any younger. This is his opportunity to make a statement saying, hey, I deserve a shot later on as well. Mm-hmm. Bunbury and Agudelo are kind of like on my striker roster as far as they need to make a statement saying that they deserve to continue to be considered mm-hmm. as options. Whereas the writer of the article mentioned CJ Sapong needs to make a statement saying that he is mm-hmm. another option. Agudelo and Bunbury need to say, hey, you should continue looking at us. We should still continue to look as an option. Mm-hmm. I think this is their opportunity. They're going to be starters. They're going to get a lot of playing time. They need to show up. That's what they need to do.
Well, here's my thought on that. When I think of Clark and Benny Feilhaber, who have been regulars for this team forever, mm-hmm. it seems like, when I hear I've been called up for Camp Cupcake and I haven't got a call up for a very long time otherwise, I'm kind of thinking that's kind of like dun 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 dun, bad news. It's that's the dark side of the moon there, because what are they going to prove in camp? They're not going to prove much in camp that Klinsmann doesn't already know about them, and they're not going to prove that much playing second-rate opponents, in Camp Cupcake, friendly territory, right? So, number one, I just think if you're Clark and you're Feilhaber, that's kind of a negative, at least for me it is. It's a bad sign for them. On the other hand, I don't see this in any way having any reflection on Agudelo or Bunbury yet. Why? Because they're the young guns, right? I think they're going to get called up for the next, unless they're just never progress or get any better, they're going to continue to get called up because we have such a thin striker lineup. They're going to continue to be called up on the first team and Camp Cupcakes for a long time. So all I think it says to CJ Sapong, is this is your opportunity to break into that group of young, the young guns, if you will.
I don't disagree with that. I am just saying that, and I'm only portraying this as if Klinsmann is only going to be manager this cycle. Not saying that he's going to continue on next cycle. Mm-hmm. This is why I'm saying Agudelo and Bunbury need to continue making names for themselves as far as when they get their opportunities and when they get their shots. Mm-hmm. If they don't perform and if they don't produce, I don't see why we'd call them up over, say, a Buttle, or even give an opportunity to Gomez.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at that point, you know, Klinsmann's entering he's entering qualifications. He can't continue using up roster spots on players who aren't producing, and as you say, against lesser opponents.
Right.
This is their chance to solidify themselves as saying the options behind Josie Altidore.
Right.
And that's as far as our pure strikers go. Of course, we always have Buttle. We know what we're going to get from Buttle. I mean, he's a clinical finisher. He's a good player.
Mm-hmm.
He is getting up there in age, of course.
Right.
We know what we're going to get with Dempsey if they play him as a striker option.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
right.
This is their opportunity to say, "Hey, we deserve to continue to get looked at."
I hate to say that we're loaded right now, because that would be
at what position?
Yeah, well, we're certainly loaded at midfield.
Of course.
The only position I see us being extremely thin at is left back. And, if Chandler ever goes down, we're right on back to picking, a lot of other poorer options in my book, or scooting Bocanegra over there. But my point is that if you're Benny Philhaber or you're Chris Wondolowski, you're pretty much done. In my book, I hate to say that. I just think they're done in the sense that Benny's never going to go back to Europe, and Chris Wondolowski is not going to Europe now at his age. And they have really they're there in a lot of ways to fill out this roster. I don't think they have a chance at ever at playing for the first team again in any major competition, maybe way back in the bench. But if I had one thing to say to guys like CJ Sapong and Jeff Cameron, is get out of MLS, get over there to Europe, and Germany would be perfect, and start really showing yourself to be. We know Jeff Cameron's really good, right? Let's get him over there and maybe he can take another extra step or leap forward as a center back by going over there and learning some things from some veteran Bundesliga players or whatever. I just think you can take that extra step, and I think one of the reasons Michael Parkhurst hadn't or hasn't taken that step in many ways, although he's done very well for his team over there, is that he's not big enough to be a traditional center back, so they've been playing him out out wide, right, defensively. But he just didn't play in a league that I don't think it's quality enough for a lot of guys to take that next step. Now, unless you're Goodson, maybe there's exceptions to that rule. But I think you have to go somewhere else. I think Scandinavia is too close to the quality of MLS that I don't think players who play in Scandinavian leagues should be getting any sort of bonus points. That's my point, is that I don't see Camp Cup. A lot of the players, older players in Camp Cupcake, I see this more of them being there, because they're in MLS now, and we're not going to fill it with players who are busy playing other places, that are more important, which is why, Klinsmann told Gonzo it was okay to go away and go play in Nuremberg. I think the older players are there just to kind of fill in the gaps. The only players I think who really have a shot in the next 3 years, and on are the young guns, and that's the Agadellos, the Bunburys, the CJ Sapongs, and to some extent Jeff Cameron is still young enough to make that leap overseas and really establish himself, say, in Germany. I think he could be. I think Jeff Cameron is one of those guys, and I can name some others in the past, like Steve Ralston, who they're so good. I can't even believe they're still here. You know what I mean?
MLS is not a selling league, so I can understand why Cameron's not here right now, or still here right now.
If he really wanted to go, Brett, he could go. Come on. Anybody who wants to go, eventually, they say it loud and hard and long enough, and they don't overextend themselves contract-wise and have a vision of the future, and they understand, well, in 2 or 3 years, I want to be playing in Europe, I want to be playing in the Bundesliga, or I want to be playing in Holland, or I want to be playing, in the English Premier League. And that's what they set their goals to, as Dempsey did. That was Dempsey's goal. He wanted to compete at the highest level, right? He wanted to take his skills to another level. That's what I want to see some of these guys do. I'm not saying that MLS isn't a good enough league to become a really solid, great player. But if you really want to take the next step forward, I think you have to go play in the best leagues in the world. Just my thought.
Kind of completely sidestepped what I was saying there. I was saying that since they're still under contract on MLS, say Cameron, for an example, who's probably this was his past third season.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming he's got maybe 1, possibly 2 more seasons on his contract left. Unless Houston is willing to let him go for a bid from some other team, Cameron's not going anywhere. He can stomp his feet, he can whine, he can complain, but quite frankly, MLS has all the power right there. I mean, if he opts to not play, then that's his own problem there. But I mean, it's just, unless Houston gets a bid worthwhile, Cameron's not going to go anywhere. And he's not going to go anywhere until his contract is up or until Houston says, you know what, this bid is worth the remaining years and the quality of player.
I'm not really sidestepping it. What I said was basically, if Jeff Cameron for a long time has had his eye on playing for the United States national team, and he has looked at the last 2 national teams that have played in our World Cups and has been keeping his eye on who's playing for our team and who actually gets on the field. He would have noticed, and a lot of these guys would have noticed over the years, including Wondolowski and anybody else who had aspirations to play for the national team, that the number of MLS players, American MLS players, making the national team, unless your name's Landon Donovan and a couple other exceptions, a few other exceptions, you're not going to make the team. You're not going to make the team. A guy like Goodson, who plays in Scandinavia, is going to get a call up before you do. If you're Cameron, it's just the way it works. Even though maybe Scandinavia in that particular league isn't that much better, or is actually could in some ways worse than MLS. The point is that you have to plan your career if that's what your aspirations are. And if you're Jeff Cameron and you know you're that damn good, then I think you start looking earlier on. We had Jimmy Conrad on the show. What did Jimmy say? Jimmy said, I wish I would have thought about it more. I wish I would have planned for it more. I wish I would have, maybe, but things were different then, he said. But now, you don't have to be Jimmy Conrad. Jimmy Conrad wishes he would have plied his trade in the best leagues in the world. He wishes he would have done that. But, what we're saying here is that guys like Jeff Cameron need to plan ahead. That's what I'm saying.
I don't disagree with planning ahead, but there's nothing he can do until his contract is up or until Houston is willing to sell. When you sign with MLS, they have basically a set contract ready for you to sign up that basically locks you in for 5 years.
Right.
So for those 5 years, if you're a nobody when you sign with MLS and you're signing for 5 years, even if you're somebody when signing for 5 years in MLS, you're probably not going to go anywhere for those 5 years unless you have unless you're just an exceptional youth player that somebody's willing to drop a crap ton of money for you. There's no planning ahead until your contract is done. You can plan ahead for when your contract ends, but until that happens, you can't do anything. For the most part.
Okay, well, that's just, I guess, we're just going to have a difference of opinion on there because...
What do you, if you're in Cameron's shoes right now, what would you do?
Years left. Okay, MLS is going to hold on to him then for at least 1 more year because the next year, if he shows himself to be a top player, they're going to want to get some money. All right, they want to sell him before his contract expires, so they get something out of him. Because if his contract is over and then he goes over to Europe, then you get nothing, right? So typically, what has happened is MLS will let a lot of these guys play up till their very last year, right? That's what they did with Dempsey. If I remember correctly, Dempsey still had 1 more year left. Yeah. And then they said, "Oh, okay. Well, now we'll sell you," because they don't want his contract to expire. Then they're just giving him away for free. So if he has 2 years left, he needs to start thinking now, a year from now, where do I want to go? Who do I want to play for? Who's interested? But then again, we could have a whole show on why 5-year contracts with the MLS in the first place is just, in my opinion, it's ridiculous.